We're live.
Yep.
Sorry, I couldn't join in person, guys, but still at the car dealership.
Oh, geez.
Oh, yeah, you said
Who was
it.
that? Ooh.
David.
Welcome, everybody, to our Capital District Regional Planning Committee on March 16th, 2022. This meeting can be streamed through YouTube at CDRPC channel. Can we have a roll call, Mark?
Sure. Albany County, we have Willard Bruce. Lucy McKnight, are you here? No. And Larry Schillinger is here with us in the room. Kristen Swinton.
I'm here.
Thanks, Kristen. Rensselaer County, I see Scott Bendett, Judy Bressler, Jim Shaughnessy, and is Mike Stammel with us? Saratoga County, Joe Grasso. See Joe.
Yep, I'm on, Mark.
Jason Kemper.
I'm on, Mark.
Jason. Opal Hins. And Craig Warner's here. Schenectady County, I see Don Ackerman.
Good
David
morning.
Hogan
Good morning,
Here.
everybody.
at the dealership. Gary Hughes, I see.
Good morning.
Morning, Gary. And Joe Landry, I see.
Good
And
morning.
Morning, Joe. And I don't see Barbara Morrow, but she was just on the CUSCI, so she might be joining us later. So by my count, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 13 people. Anybody else that I miss on the board?
Yeah, you missed me.
Oh, Jackie. Geez, Louise. Sorry, Jackie.
Yeah, I'm not under Rensselaer County anymore.
Oh, yeah. You know why? Because I updated the letterhead, and I, instead of copying your name up to the officers, I cut it and pasted it.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I got you.
Sorry for cutting. Sorry, Jackie.
No problem.
Sounds like you're in big trouble, Mark.
13 members here. And around the table on the staff, of course, Marcus Sidleon.
Martin Daly?
Amy Lundstedt. Haley Belknap. Amanda Diaz.
Thank you. On the online staff, we have Todd Pabozzi. And anybody else from the staff online?
Tara Donatio's here.
Tara. Thank you, Tara.
So we're all set. We have a quorum. Thank you, Mark. Our first order of business is to accept the minutes for the January 19th, 2022 meeting. Is there any required updates or questions? Seeing that we have none, may I hear a motion to accept? A motion. Got it, and then, okay.
And Bill seconds.
So we have a second. Is there any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed at all? Motion is carried. Thank you.
Yeah, I see we have Opal Hins joining us.
Yep. Okay, our second order of business is memorandum 2204, financial statements.
Right. Thank you, Craig. Through 2 months of the year, we're running at revenues at 9% to budget, and expenses are at 14% to budget, so under par for both, which is 16%. On the balance sheet, we have just over $94,000 of cash in hand. Outstanding receivables, close to $500,000. We've been waiting for 18 months for the Department of State to pay us for work on our Cso program. We hope to be getting paid soon. We're owed money from the DEC, NYSERDA, the DOT. And so hopefully we get paid for those soon. I don't anticipate any cash flow issues because we do have a significant amount of receivables that normally come in to our bank accounts on a regular basis. We have sent all the bills out to our granting agencies for Q4. But you'll see, running a deficit as we typically do in the first quarter until we send out the first quarter billings at the end of March. Any questions on the financials? And I saw Mike Stammel joined us.
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Mike. Hearing that, is there any other discussion or questions? Hearing none, may I have a motion to accept the financials?
Motion made.
Thank you.
Second, Jason.
Have a second? Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed at all? Motion carried. Thank you. And the next order is authorization to open an account with CEFCU. Memo 2205. Mark?
Sure. So we've been banking with KeyBank for years. Their level of customer service has declined. It's caused us significant problems. Well, I should say many problems over the course of the last 4 or so years. And so I've had enough. So I'm taking our business elsewhere, hopefully with your support. So I'm suggesting that we move our corporate accounts for the organization to CEFCU. We will be managing the transition. Obviously, we have some automatic transactions that come out of the KeyBank account. So during the transition, we'll make sure that we have enough balance in the KeyBank account to cover any accounts payable. We will transition once we are issued corporate cards from the new bank to transfer the reoccurring payments to the new cards and transfer our FSA account to the new banking institution. But again, being conscious of maintaining appropriate balances so we don't bounce on any checks or miss any payments. So just for context, we do have other bank accounts with a number of financial institutions, the Cso Program, banks with Pioneer, CUSCI, banks with Pioneer, and M&T. So we're spread over a number of institutions across the region, which has typically been our tradition. So we don't have all of our eggs in one basket. I've had a good experience with CEFCU as my personal banker. They've been more than responsive to us as we sort of work with them to get the appropriate paperwork. The only cost implication really for this is that we have to purchase new physical checks, which is in the hundreds of dollars. So the boilerplate sort of bank account resolution that's required by CEFCU is attached. So the board action will be required to adopt this resolution. And then our secretary treasurer, Jackie, would certify it, and then we'd be able to open the accounts.
I adamantly move that we move our bank account from KeyBank to CEFCU.
I can second that.
Okay, we have a second, first and a second. Do I have any questions at all? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Do we have any opposed at all? Not seeing none, the motion is carried. Okay, next on the agenda is the admin guidelines and employee manual update for the memo 2206.
Yes, this is half the reason why your packet this time is so thick. We wanted to the board convened a committee to look at the administrative guidelines back last year. Initially, this was for the purpose of examining CDRPC's policy related to remote work, and certain changes are being proposed in the handbook related to that. I will like to thank the review committee, Jackie Stallone, Judy Bressler, Barbara Morrow, and Kristen Swinton. for, again, taking a look at our employee handbook. And we've suggested a number of other updates that fall outside of just the remote work proposal that I think improve the document and clarify some benefits. So the first one is under Unit 3.1, and it's related to appointments. Now, this topic generated a lot of discussion among the committee. The original language required all appointments and all promotions to be submitted to the commission for approval in advance of that action. Members of the committee, certain members of the committee felt strongly that the board really hires the executive director, and it's the executive director's role to operate the organization and hire staff. Balancing that perspective, other members of the committee, and I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, I'm just trying to summarize our deliberations, felt that we still needed to have a formal approval process to make sure there was documentation that the commission is not, abdicating its fiduciary responsibility of oversight. So there was a desire to make sure that there was an approval of hiring and appointments, but that approval did not necessarily need to come in advance of the executive director's action. So the original language, which required advance approval, the suggested update is the executive director may make probationary appointments to annual salary positions, subject to the later approval of the commission at its next business meeting. And that hopefully is the committee's suggestion to reconcile those 2 points of view. And from my perspective as the executive director, and particularly in this job market, I want to be able to quickly respond to hiring negotiations and be able to bring staff on, in a more rapid fashion that would not be sort of subject to the fixed timeline that we have for our commission meetings. The A&F committee had a chance to look at these guidelines and these edits as well, and they support their adoption by the commission. But this one, generated a lot of discussion among the committee, and I wanted to throw it out there to the board to see if there was any questions or comments on these edits.
Is there any further questions on this?
Yeah, it's Mike Stammel.
That's yes, Mike.
Yeah, so therefore you're saying that though you may hire him, later on the board might decide not to hire him. So you're going to hire him and unhire him in a month's time? Is that what we're saying?
But they're on probation during that time, so.
Yeah. So they're on probation.
We have a provision for probationary employment, and all new hires are technically on probation for 6 months. So they can be relieved of their duties if they're not performing. So I would view this provision similar to that of civil service positions at the local level, to say that you're hired subject to your performance on the civil service exam. But this is you're hired subject to the approval of the board.
Can someone be terminated before the 6-month probation period ends, or do you have to wait for that 6 months?
Employees here are at-will employees. They're at will.
Yeah.
So the answer is yes.
This is Mike again. I'm very strongly against taking any power away from the board as a whole. I understand the need to make decisions as quickly as possible, but even if it was the admin or the A&F committee who made the decision for us all, since they're representing every county as quickly as possible over some sort of a Zoom meeting or something of that nature, I feel a little bit more comfortable with. But just to give away authority, I don't think that's why I'm here for. I'm here to make decisions for my county, and that's kind of important. Not just solely based on, I guess waiting 6 months or waiting 30 days or 60 days the next time we meet and find out about it, and then maybe it being too late to take any action against it. So that's just my opinion. Thank you.
We still have the final authority on that, and transparency between you and the A&F is still there.
I think, you know, it would be no problem, I think, and it would still meet the desires of both sort of sides of the conversation, the oversight, commission oversight and the, you know, flexibility perspectives. If the A&F committee was role mapped into the initial hiring decision. So as Mike was suggesting, the executive director, subject to the approval of the A&F committee, can make probationary appointments. Then final approval is provided by the commission. Would language like that satisfy you, Mike? So I would have to get the approval of the A&F committee in advance of actually offering the position and then bring them on board. And
Well,
then have-
offering offering the position and hiring that person. In other words, providing them resumes and the need to hire them and all that stuff that you would for any employment.
Okay.
And then, because then a release record, there's somebody there representing each county.
So, go ahead,
Judges.
If I could be heard on that, I think that really hamstrings the commission and it hamstrings our executive director. I would support the original proposition, which is that the executive director in whom we've entrusted the administration of this commission has the authority to provisionally hire to fill a vacancy. And maybe that's what we want to get at. Maybe it's filling a vacancy as opposed to creating a new position.
I mean, I think that we can meet what I need, the responsiveness,
Yeah.
because the A&F committee does not require public meeting notice, does not require week's notice in advance. So it would be just as efficient for me to get approval of the A&F committee as it would be for me to make the hire, I would think, logistically, and that's basically what I'm concerned about. So, I mean, I would be fine with correcting or updating this language to say all appointments to annual salary positions shall require the approval of the A&F committee.
I don't think you need the approval. I mean, just in terms of transparency, I mean, let's create a hypothetical, right? I mean, the board doesn't want to find out that 6 weeks ago, you know, you hired your cousin who needs some work, right? So if the issue is some level of transparency and accountability, then as long as you're going to notify the A&F committee, why not just notify the whole board? So what I would suggest is that instead of sort of expanding the role of the A&F committee to be approving, probationary appointments, that the obligation of the executive director would be to, if there's a provisional hiring of somebody on a probationary period prior to that being ratified by the board, then you provide notice of your intent to do so to the full board, including obviously the A&F committee. And that way you're transparent. But I don't believe that it's necessary or appropriate for the A&F committee to engage in that degree of oversight where we're looking at resumes of a provisional appointment. We have to trust your judgment on that, or whoever is the executive director, trust that person's judgment.
Well, thank you, Larry, and I understand what you're saying. I look back at the appointing authority, and I'm appointed by my authority to do certain functions, and this was one of the functions. Now, when I go back to them and they say to me, well, who made the decision to hire that person? And why weren't you more involved? I find that to be a problem if I can't answer it truthfully just by saying that, well, I advocated my authority because for convenience. I don't think that's justifiable on my end.
Sure, but Mike, to that point, if you're not on the A&F committee, you're in the dark.
No, I would say
so. I'm actually creating more transparency. So you're not on the A&F committee, but you're going to get notice from the executive director that a person has been appointed, has been hired provisionally, subject to subsequent ratification by the entire board. So now you've got notice and transparency. you could be doing your due diligence. That way, to your point, you've got that level of accountability to the people who appointed you to this commission.
And I understand that. We're just trying to find some agreement which satisfies you and Mike.
Right.
And
So
us all.
right. So to meet Mike's objective that he wants to be accountable to the folks in Rensselaer County to whom he reports,
You still have that.
he knows that the executive director has hired, John Smith, subject to a subsequent ratification of the full board. But
That's
it's not
true.
a widespread process.
So this would, for just discussion purposes, to affect Larry's suggestion, proposed language to this edit would be executive director may make probationary appointments to annual salary positions with notice to the commission and subject to the later approval of the commission at its next business meeting.
Not to prolong this anymore than it has to, but at the same token, if you're going to hire somebody, for any position that's available, the board would have to know in advance anyway. I would like to think that we are able to bring that back to our own commissions, our own counties, and say, that CRPC is looking to hire somebody for something, and be able to have an applicant available, and then advocate to support that person if that's what we needed to do instead of after the fact, prior to.
Yeah, but that then creates a perception that the Capital District Regional Planning Commission is a bastion of county patronage. We don't want to be getting into those inter-county, battles. That why are you picking this person from Saratoga? We got someone in Rensselaer. So I pretty much reject that out of hand, Mike. I'm sorry.
Well, I wasn't looking at it that way. I was looking at, say, hey, we know somebody that might want the position. That's all. Is if it's not being posted anywhere, or not being notified anywhere, how are you going to tell somebody that there's a job available that somebody? I'm not looking for any sort of patronage job. I'm just saying that every county should have a say in it, I guess, one way or another, through the whole process.
So we have, an employment policy that outlines, where and how we promote and advertise available positions. And we certainly put that out through our email list and share it with the commissioners. So we want to make sure that we're casting as wide a net as possible when we have open positions. But, we typically operate on consensus in the board here. So I want to see if we can find some consensus, and maybe we can look at some of the other areas, other edits, while we sort of think about this particular provision, which I anticipated would generate the most conversation. Does that make sense?
Well, then I would ask that we table it, bring it back to our own appointing authorities and ask them how they would think we should support it, and then come back and make a decision at the next meeting unless there's something pending right now.
If we could, I would like to make the other edits, but table this particular edit to the unit 3, if that would be possible. If tabling is on the table, as it were.
I'm not opposed to that.
I don't see the need to table anything, frankly. I mean, I think why don't we just put up to a vote? If Mike wants to vote no, we can vote no.
Can I just jump
So,
in?
I mean, in fact, let me advance that. I'll make a motion right now that the executive director is authorized to hire, provided that he provides notice to the board within whatever period of time we decide. Let's say 48 hours, it's a week, whatever, and subject to the subsequent approval of the board at its next regularly scheduled meeting. I'll make that motion. Then
I have no problem.
Vote on it.
Do I hear a second?
There was the point of discussion on there. I heard somebody wanted to say something.
Yes, I would like to say something since, Mark
Barbara.
kind of said Mark said he didn't want to put words in anyone's mouth. So I was the loudmouth, at these meetings, really pressing for formal board approval of all hiring. Without board as a whole or individuals interfering with the duty that we have already given our executive director to hire people, to staff, the commission staff, without interference. I think and as I said to the committee many times, I'm basing it on, my years of experience on school boards. We spend public money. We formally approve of every hire that a school district makes. We don't interfere. We don't tell the superintendent who to hire, who not to hire. There's a formal record at a board meeting that Miss X has been hired. It's in the record, it's in the minutes, and it's available to auditors anytime an audit comes up. I know in school districts, I was very surprised to find out that when the controller's office comes to do the every 5-year audits of the school districts, they actually look in the minutes. They do a sampling of the minutes and compare that to the people that have been hired to make sure that, there isn't anybody who's being paid that wasn't formally hired. So, the point I was pressing was that we keep doing what we do now. Let Mark hire people as he hires now, but it will need a formal approval by the board. I don't go around in Schenectady County asking people if they approve of who Mark wants to hire for a position. I understand Mike's point about accountability to the people in our counties, but I think we shouldn't take that too far. We don't meddle, neither do the citizens of the counties. We have a commission, we have an executive director, he does his job, he's been doing a great job in hiring, but that final piece of just having the board formally approve the appointment of that person, is what I was looking for.
Still have the first on the table.
Can I add into the discussion also? It's Judy Bressler.
Hey, Judy.
One thing I do want to bring up, I think most of the appointments that Mark is making for somebody is people with basically a planning background. And I know right now in the Capital District, there's over 19 positions where people are begging for people with a planning background. In any other circumstance, I would say, yes, we have to wait until we have a full meeting of the board. But I think at these times, in the pressing times of trying to find educated people to step into these positions is a bit difficult. One of the things I think that we can do is, do we have to meet as a board in person? Or if Mark should be interviewing someone and feels this person is appropriate, could he send out an email to the entire board saying, I'm about to make this appointment. I've interviewed this person. We need to move quickly before we lose that person. But I would hate to think he's interviewing someone and we have to wait maybe 6 weeks before we gather as a group before the person can actually start. They'll walk. They're not going to stay. But I understand what Mike is saying. And this is a discussion we had over and over and over and over. I really felt, well, maybe it should be handled in a different way. But with the job market the way it is, and with the expertise needed for the Planning Federation, it puts it into a whole other ballgame. And that's my end of my discussion.
I agree.
Mark, it's Jason. Just 2 quick points. First, how many hires have we had in the last, let's say, 18 months?
We've had one.
Okay.
Just you, right? Just Haley. We will be hiring for a replacement for Josh in the near term, and that job advertisement's out. And then we will be hiring a new clean energy outreach coordinator once we get the DEC contract, or I should say climate smart outreach coordinator.
Okay, so and I appreciate everyone's comments. This is where I'm at. If Mark, I have a lot of, faith and trust in Mark. If Mark is okay with an amendment and he's the one that brought forth the original concern with being hamstrung by the timing in this policy, and Mark is okay with a suggestion that alleviates his concerns, at the same time you take into, look at both sides of it, the individuals that have spoken, I think I'm okay sort of changing it a little bit that alleviates Mark's concerns while at the same time try to find a middle ground on the concerns I've raised. And that's where I'm at on it.
And if we're in the discussion
So-
phase, I will just provide my perspective that consensus of the board, for me, is more important than my convenience of in the hiring process. So I do hope we can find some middle ground here.
Okay.
Can we
So
just,
are we
you know,
going?
Well, look, I mean, this is Larry. I adhere to the 30 years of marriage rule, which is, tell them everything right away because they find out anyway. So, which is why, what I find compelling here is that, Mark in his professional judgment with the authority in which we've entrusted him makes the determination to hire, John Doe. The transparency element is you should notify the board of that. And then notify the board that I'm hiring John Doe. Here's why. Here's his resume. And I will ask that you ratify this appointment at our next regularly scheduled meeting. And that way everything's done. Now, if during the course of the time between the notification and the next regularly scheduled meeting, one were to vet John Doe and find out that John Doe is singularly unqualified, then that gets brought up at that next regularly scheduled meeting, and we have at it. But meanwhile, that's the unlikely event. But meanwhile, Mark gets to, move the ball ahead, which is what we need to do. Especially given Judy's comments that when it comes to hiring qualified people whose talents and skills are in demand, we got to move quickly.
And I think there's a certain amount of protection with the probationary period. There's 6 months there. That person has to, prove their worth. So if we see something strange in their history, background, or work, you got 6 months. That person understands they're not a permanent employee for that 6 months.
And the board meets quarterly anyway, so we're inside that window and that satisfies transparency.
There you go. So I'll reiterate the motion.
Okay.
The motion being that, assuming there's no more discussion.
Well, do we want to go over the other elements?
why do you want to have a motion now on this point? I don't understand that because we're just talking about.
So there are other edits in the manual that I wanted to go over.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then I'm jumping the
Let's
gun.
take care of everything and then we'll go back to it
Got
and then
I'm with you.
have a clean slate on it.
But we're still in the discussions. There's a motion, a
Yep.
second.
No, I was gonna say there is a motion, okay.
So we're gonna withdraw that motion.
Well, this is Mike again. This is Mike again. Are you saying we're going to, since there's a question on this, we're just gonna pass it by, then wrap it in a package with everything? So therefore, if I voted no on this particular issue in this package of edits that need to be made, then I would have to be voting no on all of them?
No, I'm sorry, Craig.
I was just gonna state that our task is to accept or modify the whole handbook as an update.
So if there are elements of the handbook that don't have consensus support, in my opinion, those edits will be either removed or modified until we can get consensus. That's just my perspective as the executive director. The action that's being proposed to the board is the whole document.
Yeah.
So if there are edits that we want to make as we go through and review this, we can make those. But the final version is going to be the whole thing up for adoption. And hopefully all the elements will achieve consensus.
So we can actually, if there is an issue going forward, we would have to amend our document that we approve today. You're saying,
Okay.
right?
Well, the options are, for this particular element, for example, hypothetically, we keep the proposed edits, we modify the proposed edits to achieve something that we all can agree on, or we keep it the way it was originally. And then we go through the other elements of the updates.
Oh, so you do want to separate them out?
Well, I just want to make sure that whatever we adopt as the final version, the board takes action on, achieves consensus. So if we can't achieve consensus on any one of the elements and changes, my suggestion to the board would simply be to revert that language back to its original language and adopt the rest of the changes. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes sense. I just,
Okay.
All right, so I wanted to just go over the other items in
Other
the
items
updates,
first, and then
and then we'll come back to this one and maybe we can get consensus on the language. So the next
something in it.
edit is in unit 5.6, incentive bonus and longevity payments. For some reason, the original language was written to eliminate longevity payments after 20 years. And so this suggested language simply just says, after 15 years of service, 10 years of service, you're eligible for a longevity payment every 5 years thereafter, and not stopping it at 20 years. The next one is in unit 6.2. This is an update to our language related to time record approvals. The old language really was a paper-based process and doesn't reflect current office practices. And the new language proposed here simply articulates what our current practice and internal control is for timesheet approval. Section 6.4, remote work. We had previously had a policy in there related to remote work. We called it alternative work locations, but everyone just calls it remote work now. So the language in that section largely remains unchanged. However, the guide rails of the executive director's decision-making process on whether or not to extend the privilege of remote work to employees has been updated. And specifically, the executive director shall consider the performance, seniority, nature of work, among other factors, before allowing alternative work schedules. And the other language in there largely mirrors the existing language about, the executive director's ability to reassess the remote work situation, and the like. So it's completely at the discretion of the executive director. Having conversations with the staff, there is consensus among the staff that it's important for all staff to be in the office together certain days a week. And we have consensus on that. And I think that's what we're going to be moving forward. But this language, gives me, again, discretion to allow these remote work policies, but considering different factors to make sure that it's fairly applied and that that privilege is continually monitored based on performance. And any questions on that one? Moving on to 7.1, we follow New York State holidays. Juneteenth was made a New York State holiday last year. So we added it to the legal holidays for staff. Unit 10, 7.10, that's related to bereavement leave. The committee suggested including step relations in those eligible for bereavement leave.
Hey, Mark,
7.1.
how many floater holidays are given to staff? Just curious as the number of floaters.
1, 2, 3, 4 floaters. I added Juneteenth as a floater because people like that flexibility.
Well, so floaters meaning they have the date, they can use it on a different day? Is that how it?
You can take it in advance, but it goes into your accruals as comp time, essentially.
Okay.
That's according to your approval, or?
Well, all time off is subject to my approval. But employees have the flexibility on whether or not to take it on that day or whether to use it later.
Right.
7.11, and the committee identified this as one issue, and then I did a little research and found out by law we're supposed to be providing this benefit anyway, that all public sector employees are afforded 4 hours of paid leave to undertake cancer screenings without deduction to their sick, personal, or vacation leave. And so that language is added to our policy to reflect what we have to offer our employees. Unit 9.7, continuing education. This is language that just clarifies that costs for certification maintenance for certified planners and related fees shall be reimbursable under the continuing education professional development clause. Unit 9.8, professional memberships. The maximum per year is increased to 500. The professional membership obligation costs have increased over the years, and that reflects more of what the cost share today should look like. 9.9, the health and FSA. This is just a section in there that then refers to the fact that we have an FSA policy, an FSA plan, and that employees want to participate, what the general guidelines are, open enrollment, where they can find information about the plan. 10.5, the Hatch Act. The committee wanted me to take a look at the Hatch Act because we have a number of employees who have historically been interested in running for political office or participating in political activities. The initial interpretation we had of the Hatch Act is that activity was prohibited, but we did seek legal counsel who noted that the Hatch Act only applies to staff members whose salary are entirely federally funded. And so that language is carried through to our policy. Unit 13.2. This relates to our internet and email policy, and I just added a social media policy to this. Basically, it says that all of these rules apply to your activity, your work activity on social media. And it has a final clause under 13.29 that basically says employees assigned to post official agency social media accounts must coordinate with the executive director prior to posting content. Same guidelines apply to this as email communications. In addition, employees should not engage in debate on social media and must limit their engagement to factual statements or clarifications related to the post. I think we all know that it's not a good outcome is very rare when you start to engage in debate on social media. So we want to just make sure that we're either clarifying, what we're putting out there, or providing related information, but not necessarily engaging in debate on social media. So that just puts that down on paper.
It's clarification only.
Right. So we'll come back to 3.1.
Could I just ask one question in regards to the Hatch Act?
Sure.
How much federal money do we have right now? Are we using any?
We receive federal money from the EDA, which is $70,000 a year. With the CARES Act, we received an additional $400,000 over the course of the last 2 years. So it's roughly, I would say, $170,000 we have in our budget of strictly federal dollars. The 604B money is passed through federal dollars. It goes to the DEC. So the origin of that is federal money.
Right.
And that totals, I think our budget amounts $54,000 this year. So it's about 230 back of the napkin.
Are those programs spread through the office, or is there just one person
Yep.
handling most of them?
There's no employee who's working 100% on federal work.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yep.
So
So
we're getting back to 3.1, 3.2.
mhm.
We had that first motion withdrawn, so I would say we're gonna put it forth as planned, right?
Do you want me to read the proposed compromise language again?
Yeah,
It should be on the screen, right? The executive director may make appointments to annual salary positions with advance notice to the commission and subject to the later approval of the commission at its next business meeting.
In advance notice would just be an email?
Yes, with the resume and qualifications.
they've all been notified on it, so there is that transparency there, and we still have at the end of the probationary, we have to adopt it anyway, so I would say don't have an issue.
Okay. So moved.
I just got a question, again, regarding the applicants in the beginning, how are we notified that an application is needed, or we're going to do a hire? Or would we be hired in advance? We'd be notified in advance?
Yes, so what I typically do is we do an email blast that we have positions open, we share it on social media, and we send an email out or other notifications. I think I did that this time. Did I send an email out?
I think we did.
I think you did, yes.
I got.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. I just didn't know if that was, yeah.
Do we have any other questions?
I just want to say one thing. I don't, if for the board approval that I've been advocating for, it doesn't necessarily have to be at the next regularly scheduled meeting, because Mark brought up the fact that, you know, we do occasionally have a special meeting. And I don't see why we couldn't, especially since we can do Zoom meetings, you know, have a special meeting.
It's not guaranteed that Zoom meetings will
Right.
will last once we, come out of the pandemic fully.
But we still have that option though.
yeah, it's not guaranteed that the market's always going to have a small amount of jobs available. We'll have to grab the first one either. I mean, every market gets overfilled.
Well, to accommodate Barbara's point, then you can just remove the word regularly scheduled meeting and just say
We
scheduled
can have
meeting.
our own, yeah.
It's on the next scheduled meeting,
It's
because
just,
you still have to have a scheduled meeting, even if it's emergency meeting or provisional.
the
Call
board
it
approval can happen
meeting.
at a regularly scheduled meeting or a
So
special
it's still
meeting.
gotta be noticed, right? You
Oh,
can't have
yeah.
a meeting without,
You have that anyway, so.
right, so the next scheduled meeting.
So right now it says, I'll read it again, the executive
Or add it to
director
schedule.
may make probationary appointments to annual salary positions with advance notice to the commission and subject to the approval of the commission at its next business meeting.
How about? Yeah, that's fine.
Because you're still within that 6 months.
But we don't want to force the board to actually deal with it at its next meeting if it's not timely. No, keep it like it is. That's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine. Good. So moved.
So move. We have a first. Do I have a second?
Second,
So I want to make sure that we get the appropriate
Count.
amendments to both sections that are related. And
Sorry, but I didn't hear if that motion just
Not
said
yet.
to board approval
Or in
or
question.
the next scheduled meeting. So I think it's just, what we're looking for is board approval, regardless of if
I
it's.
think
a
he's going back to that
or
now.
a Scheduled, regularly scheduled meeting.
So the language is, it just says, the executive director may make appointments to annual salary positions with advance notice to the commission and subject to later approval of the commission at its next business meeting. So it doesn't say regularly scheduled, it just says whenever they meet next. You could either change it to at its next meeting, or you could say at a future business meeting.
That's up to the discretion of us anyways. We gotta have a special one, we gotta have a special.
I mean, the word next encapsulates any kind of meeting that the board would have.
Okay. But it's
Mark,
not-
is there a time, would you, if someone just started, would you prefer to do it later on within their probationary period, excuse me? With that at all? Because I would be fine with you, as long as it's formal approval during the probationary period. The overall accommodations, I think,
They're
are strong.
For me, they're not necessarily directly related because we're trying to establish appropriate oversight of the commission for the hiring. The probationary period really is my administrative oversight of the staffer to make sure that they're performing well.
Exactly right.
I think that, I use the word probationary in this language because that's the appropriate word, but the two things are not necessarily directly related.
That's right. Right, the board can approve the hire and subsequently the executive director can deem that person not having the right stuff.
Right.
During the probationary period. That's correct.
So in fact, all appointments that anybody makes are probationary. according to the existing policies, right?
Well, everyone's to your point much earlier, it's an at-will employment status anyway, so anyone can be terminated without cause at any time. So
It's true.
You're always on probation.
exactly right.
Yes, that's true. So hearing that, hearing all the questions, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Is there anybody opposed at all?
I'm opposed, Mike, not, I just have a problem advocating the authority prior. So I'm opposed.
You are opposed.
Yes.
Okay. Hearing that, motion passes. Next. Okay. The next order is a new FSA provider approval per Memo 2207.
Yeah, so this is required paperwork from our new FSA administrator. As you recall, we established the FSA formally back in May of 2021. Our previous provider was CDPHP. They no longer offer FSA administration as a service. We had to find a new FSA administrator. Amy did a search for a number of providers in the area that could provide the service. We decided to go with our payroll company for administrative convenience. Their fees were comparable to other organizations out there that provide the service. And the wheres and what fors in their documents are attached. So two things are attached: the whole FSA plan, which is a lot of boilerplate provided by our FSA administrator, and then the actual boilerplate resolution that they require to actually, demonstrate formal board approval for the establishment of the FSA plan. Now, again, we had to do a resolution that was similar to this when we established the FSA plan back in May of 2021. This is just the language that our new provider needs to document that approval.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. Are there any questions? Hearing no questions, do I have a motion to accept?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Do I have a second? I have a second. Is there any questions? No questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Is there anybody opposed? Hearing none, it's carried. Thank you. So one other issue is our staff report.
Sure, thank you,
Mark?
Mr. Chairman. So it's not a lot has transpired since our January meeting, but we do have a staff updated. I mentioned Josh Toshi's left us for a lucrative position with the New York State Division of the Budget. And we wish him all the best. I think he's going to do very well at that job. We are hiring for that position. The link to the solicitation is in your packet there. Martin Daly is with us here today. He's leading up our effort to do our annual or biannual training program. We're doing it in a webinar format this spring. Hopefully be back in person in the fall. We started planning this when Omicron was really wreaking havoc on our region, so we decided to keep it remote. Proves to be a relatively popular arrangement, low cost fee for entry. We're charging $17.50 basically to cover Martin's time to put everything together. Registration is currently opening, and some of the topic areas that we're going to be covering: recreational marijuana, temporary accessory dwelling units, seeker, and the new MS4 permit. Seeker, MS4. So good stuff. That timely information for planning and zoning board members and other elected officials. We're going to be doing the Corning Awards again in 2022. So look for those solicitations coming out towards the later half of the summer. We all know the great work that Todd Fabosi and the Clean Energy team have done to secure that Climate Smart grant. We are still waiting very patiently for DEC to send us the contract back. Everything with them takes a long time. So we anticipate hopefully having somebody, at least the contract signs, hopefully by May, maybe June. We'll see how long it takes them. We're wrapping up this afternoon our offshore wind supply chain study, and that's the study we partnered with CEG on. It was about $130,000 study, of which we used $50,000 of CARES Act money. The consultants are coming into town today to do the presentation of the final report, and so we'll be taking a look at that today. We're updating our economic recovery dashboard. We have allocated funding for the final year of maintaining that economic recovery dashboard to our consultants, so they'll be working on that. The Decennial Census, a big announcement is going to be happening tomorrow, St. Patty's Day. We're looking forward to it. We still have yet to receive the full, I forget what the acronym is, but the full census data. And once we receive the full census data, we will then proceed with our process of doing population projections for the region. So until the full census data is out, we can't start that process, and we'll continually update the census page as that data becomes available. Obviously, our routine data that we put out there, we did have some good reaction and response to our data news that we sent out for the winter, showing the tremendous recovery in the unemployment rate in the region. Hidden in that statistic are the number of workers that have left the workforce, because that's a percentage of workers that are actually in the workforce or eligible to be in the workforce, and does not count workers that are no longer in the workforce. So mothers with young children left the workforce in record numbers during the pandemic. Clean Energy Community Program still hitting the ground running, or firing on all cylinders, depending on what analogy that you want to use. Many thanks to Tara and Haley and our new intern, Grace Hotop from Binghamton University, and of course Todd Fabosi for his leadership on it. Our transportation and land use section, we continue to do a good job providing direct benefits to our communities through our joint technical assistance program with CDRPC. For the year, this year's tranche of projects represents almost $100,000 in project effort for those communities that we're providing with them in partnership with CDTC. Kate Maynard, who is unfortunately sick today, she's been doing a hell of a job communicating with our regional stakeholders related to our broadband grant that we received from the Northern Border Regional Commission. We're trying to identify projects that are actually going to move the needle and trying to meet the counties where they are in the planning process for broadband expansion, particularly in areas that are not served, and those areas can be in both rural and urban areas. She's also been doing a hell of a lot of work with our partners at CEG and a number of other organizations on a workforce grant application to the EVA's Build Back Better program, and specifically to the Workforce Challenge component. So a lot of creative partnerships being driven by that funding, and we were assisting in development of that grant application. We're still moving through our CARES Act subawards. We're tracking at about 54% of that CARES Act award money spent. We are approaching the close of that grant funding term. The grant funding expires on June 30th. And so we're working with a couple counties to make sure that they can spend their allocation down before that deadline date. We have heard that there may be some flexibility to extend the deadline date, which will be good to ensure that we can spend it all down. Our portion of the funds will be completely exhausted by the time we reach 6:30, right? One of the more interesting projects that we're working on, and we're rekindling it this year, is the Future Leaders in Planning program. And that's a program that's oriented to sort of develop the workforce by introducing students to professions in public service, planning, and sustainability. And if you're anything like me, you didn't learn about that these professions existed until you went to college. So this is a program that targets seniors in high school, and it's really an experiential program to get them out into the field, to see projects, to meet people who work in these professions, and to see the diversity of potential jobs that there are in this big sort of area that we work in at CDRPC. We have good partnerships. We've partnered with Hudson Valley Community College on the project, working with their P-Tech program up in the Malta Tech Park. Carm Bazile from CDTA has agreed to provide transportation on the bus service. CDTC is funding some of our time and their time to help plan this effort to attract students. And this year, Kate Maynard, who is leading the project, is trying to expand the program to include a more diverse cross-section of students in the region. It's a summertime program that's planned. And again, we're probably aiming for around 4 days of a week where the kids will be out in the field exploring all that the profession has to offer. In terms of economic impact analysis, we're redoing right now the economic impact analysis for the University at Albany. The last one we did for them calculated their economic impact was more than $1 billion to the region. So they're looking to reassess where that number stands today. Martin Daly has taken the lead on starting some conversations related to regional solid waste management. And Bill Bruce has been saying, why do you want to get involved in that topic? we did that 20 years ago. And
20 years ago.
we're going to start doing it again. There's some low hanging fruit related to, diversion of compostable waste. And there's a number of organizations interested in this space, but everything that we do, we think makes sense if we coordinate on a regional basis. So we'll see how that goes. In terms of the CSO program, Martin included some statistics of where we stand in the program. Obviously, the largest project is still underway in Lincoln Park, the Beaver Creek Clean River Project. If you have an opportunity, you can explore what that project looks like. The Albany Department of Water has pictures on their website of the project in place. What's the project budget now? 50 million?
55 million.
$55 million project. And once it's scheduled to go online?
It has to be constructed by December 31st of this year.
December 31st of this year. So the clock's ticking for them to get it done. But no issues really in that we anticipate that will be an extension on that project timeline.
Not at the moment.
Martin is wrapping up a watershed protection study for the Watervliet Reservoir and is presenting drafts to both the city of Watervliet and the town of Gilderland, just to make sure they're on the same page. Again, the Watervliet Reservoir is in the town of Gilderland. So what happens in Gilderland affects Watervliet's source water, drinking water. Martin mentioned the MS4 permit is going to be released, which is going to require a whole bunch more work that communities have no idea that they're going to need to do. So one of our jobs is going to be sharing that good news with them and helping them to figure out how to get it done. In terms of the juvenile secure detention facility, a lot has happened in the past couple of months, but the staffing shortage continues. The facility operator has been put under a performance improvement plan by OCFS to ensure that they improve their staffing ratios because they have not been in compliance with staffing ratios, and the youth have not been able to participate in program because of the staffing shortages. They did present to the CDYCI board earlier today a budget that anticipated a significant budget increase that will help them meet the needs of salary requirements for frontline staff and a full build out of staffing lines to fully staff the facility at the level that OCFS wants to see. Significant budget increase over the course of the couple of years, but it's a needed investment to make sure that we can attract the staff that we need to operate the facility. The facility improvement and expansion project, the schematic design phase was completed. We've received approval from OCFS to proceed to the design development phase. We've onboarded, Albany County has onboarded a construction manager. We've established a project working group that meets bi-weekly to talk about, as we move through the design phase, specific elements of the project. And we reviewed project phasing today with the CDYCI board. We anticipate that the project will hopefully, if everything stays online, begin in October of 2022 and be completed sometime in the spring of 2024. There are 3 major phases of the project. And again, it's going to be an occupied facility for the duration of the project. So a variety of modified procedures and plans and other things are going to need to happen to make sure that the program can be contained and that the work can be done in a safe and efficient manner as possible. The original cost estimate for the project was $11 million, and an amount that has been submitted to DOB and the Dormitory Authority for financing is $15 million. Given the volatility of the market right now in terms of materials and labor, our cost estimator really encouraged us to increase the budget so we don't have to go back to the financiers at some later date to capture unanticipated cost increases.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it. Active staff, a lot of projects happening.
Yes, like to thank the staff. They're still continuing to plug away. Very, very pleased with our progress. And this next year, particularly with the rollout of the Climate Smart Communities Program and a number of other things that we're working on, it's going to be a big year. And I'll have my head buried in construction at the Juvenile Detention facility.
Wow, a lot is happening. Thank you much. Is there any questions on the staff activity report?
No, very busy and active staff. I appreciate all they do for us.
They do. And it is appreciated very much. Is there anything else you have questions on going forward? Anybody? No? Okay, then that being said, our next meeting is May 18th, 2022. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Second, thank you very much. We will see you then on May 18th, 2022.
Jackie? I have a few things for your signature.
Okay, you need the wet signature, you mean?
I'm not sure I could ask the bank about the resolution. I'll email them to you, and then if there's a problem, I'll let you know.
Okay. Yep, I'll be around.
Okay, thank you.